This is Jonathan Lane from Fan Film Factor, and today I am here with, well, you've heard the song The Heart of Rock and Roll. This would be the heart of Star Trek fan films, as far as I am concerned. I am here with Vance Major, and for everybody who thinks his name is actually Vance Major Owen, no, that was, well, actually, why don't you explain that? How did your Facebook handle become Vance Major Owen when your name is just Vance Major?
It's just a Facebook glitch. They made me have to verify who I was, and then, yeah, just trolls on the internet make me have to verify who I was, and I was too lazy to fight that once it was all said and done. So just laziness on Facebook's part. So, yeah, that's it.
Well, I think you told me at one point Owen is your middle name. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's my middle name, and I had to actually show Facebook my birth certificate and my driver's license, and it's one of those things where if I had to actually verify who I was again, I'd be like, screw it, it's just Facebook, who cares? But on my driver's license, it says Vance Major, and then underneath it says Owen. So Facebook, in their infinite wisdom, put my name as Vance Major Owen, and when they reinstated my account, that's what they put it as. And I was like, really? So, I figure I'll just leave it that way instead of, correcting them on it. And I figure if somebody ever tries to question who I am again, I'm already verified. So, yeah, just leave it the way it is. So, it is what it is. So.
Well, I just wanted to get that out of the way, because every time I hear somebody, Alec Peters, say Vance Major Owen, I'm just like, no, his name is just Vance Major. Owen is his middle name. Vance Owen Major.
That's why I'm like, just call me V-Man. It's all good,
I call you V-Man. I will call you V-Man during this interview. Okay, so why are you here? And I'm going to tell people, and as an introduction, you have just done the unthinkable. I would say the impossible, but you did it. You have released 69 Star Trek fan films onto the Internet during a 3-day period. And of these, 40 of them are brand new, never been seen before, and the other 29 of them are, I guess, upgraded versions of existing fan films that had been released before. And I think the total you told me was how many hours if you wanted to binge watch everything?
Well, I know just with the Constar ones, is 10 hours. After that, I kind of stopped counting. So I couldn't tell you the total hours, because after that I just got mind-numbingly beside myself. So just the Constar ones is about 10 hours. And we're going to be doing kind of a get-together at my house, watching the Constar ones, kind of celebrating, all the work we've done. That was what we had kind of set aside, 10 o'clock in the morning to 8 at night, just kind of chilling, and it was 10 hours.
Schedule time for bathroom breaks, dude.
There you go, man. Well, we'll just keep it running so we don't have to stay longer, because I want to go to sleep at that point. So 10 hours is what the Constar stuff is. But outside that, I'm not really sure. I think all the Valiant ones were like maybe 3 or 4 hours. I think, and then the Mirror Universe ones, I think were only, I think it was like maybe 2 hours. If that, so not very long on those. So
you're looking at 15 hours of binge watching. It's sort of a little longer than watching The Crown. Actually, I would like to thank you, and I'm being sarcastic when I say that, because I'm not really thanking you for timing this pretty much just about the same time as The Mandalorian is going on, and they're about to release the latest season of The Expanse. The second season of Lost in Space is coming out. All this is happening in December. So not only do I have to binge watch 15 hours of your fan films, I've got to do another 20 or 30 hours of other sci-fi stuff. And, oh, yes, Picard starts in January, so I don't really have a lot of time to get the stuff done.
Can't wait for that, too, by the way. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of us can't wait for that. We're just like, don't let it be Discovery. But, no, it won't be. But anyway, back to Constar. So just so you folks know, I've actually started the binge watching already in preparation for this phone call. Vance and I are talking the week before he released it. And I'm 16 episodes in, almost. I'm still about 9 out of 15 minutes into the 16th episode that I've been watching through. And for you folks who are wondering, what the heck is this, that we're talking about? Why am I giving it such attention and such reverence? Because when you watch anything that Vance does, whether it's his Menard films or whether it's the new Constar Chronicles that he's releasing, you're going to notice almost immediately that, pardon me for saying this, Vance, but they're not that good in terms of quality, in terms of craft, in terms of acting ability. And yet, here I am calling you the heart of Star Trek fan films, and here I am telling people to spend 10 or 15 hours binge-watching this. So why am I telling you to do this? Why am I saying to people, watch this guy who, has the cord in the doorway and doesn't care, whose sound mixing is not always great and you can't necessarily hear what people are saying? The episodes are, in a lot of cases, kind of slow moving. Sometimes, and I'm going to be honest with you here, sometimes while I'm watching your episodes, I play Angry Birds. I can look up, I can look back down. It's like, oh, same shot. I'm looking back down, shoot another bird. So, anyway, what is it about Menard and Constar that I find so compelling that I think you should find, the viewer, the listener here, so compelling? And here's what I think, and then you can chime in on this as well, Vance. What you present is an experience in that the whole story of Eric Menard, who is a very long-lived Starfleet officer, thanks to this Valhalla stone that he finds, has essentially lived from the Pike era through to the 24th century, through, the Borg battle at Wolf 359 and retaking of Deep Space Nine. He's seen it all. He's risen from being a humble engineer to a captain, and he's literally saved the universe. Take that, Kirk. But you don't present his story in a normal, typical way that one would expect. In fact, when you first released your Menard stories, your Menard fan films, they were completely out of order. You just jumped around. You were 23rd century, 24th century, back to 23rd, early 23rd, late 23rd, back and forth, back and forth. But what was amazing is that after you had watched it all, and as I'm watching the Constar stuff now, it's very much like a tapestry. It's like a quilt that's getting sewn together piece by piece. And the pieces aren't always next to each other, but eventually you're going to be covered by a very warm and comfortable blanket. So you're meeting characters and you're seeing events from different moments. And you have to actually pay attention. Even if you are playing Angry Birds, you have to pay attention to what's going on because, Vance, you're forcing your viewer to say, oh, this is a scene that takes place at this point in Menard's life, and this is going on, and I saw the first part of the scene, and now I'm seeing the second part of the scene, and it's not back-to-back. And in addition to all of that, and I'll stop talking very soon, I promise, but in addition to all that, each episode is presented in a very unique way. I mean, the episodes are anywhere between 3 minutes long and 30 minutes long, so we're not just talking about each one is a 6-minute long episode and you're done. But what happens with each episode is you have an epilogue, you have your closing credits, and then there's an important scene after the closing credits. So when you watch these guys, you really do. You have to watch the whole darn thing. But the stuff at the end is important because it sometimes doesn't have anything to do with the episode you just saw. It might have to do with the episode you might be seeing, and not necessarily the next episode you're going to be seeing, but maybe an episode you're going to be seeing 5 or 6 or 10 episodes down the line. So for me, experientially, what you're creating, despite it being quote-unquote low quality, is immersive. It's an experience I haven't had certainly in fan films. And in some cases, even with all the stuff I'm binge-watching on HBO and Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu and whatever else. So now I'm finished talking. Chime in, Vance. What do you think about everything I just said?
Well, first off, I really appreciate the fact that you are saying that it's, an experience. Like, I don't take any offense to the Angry Birds comment, because I I kind of have my own version of Angry Birds. I usually will sit there and I'll play my, whether it's YouTube or Netflix or whatever, or even put on my own videos while I'm doing, work here while I'm at work. Because, I do a lot of computer work here while I'm working. That's kind of my job as a data tracker. So I'll put on, my own films. Usually it's, the editing process. So I'm listening to whatever the edit is or whatever, kind of watching while I'm doing my work. But it's one of those things where, the thing about my films is it is usually just set the camera down, two people walk into frame, and then they're just talking. It's kind of like Kevin Smith's earlier days, like if you go and watch Clerks. There's not a lot of camera movement, even on the higher, well, what I would call budget, even though I don't really have much of a budget. Even on the higher end films that I do, like there's just not much camera work there. It's just people talking. And the thing about my films is it is pretty much life. If you go to any film that I do, it's just people in life. And I think that's why my films are relatable to people. It's not necessarily Star Trek. It's just, life story, at any given moment. And you don't know who's going to show up at your door next. When someone knocks at your door and you kind of open it up, it's like, who's there? That's kind of these films. It's, you don't know who's going to show up as the character. You don't know who's going to show up next. And, then the next guest spot, they may show up 5 episodes later, or, how they're going to be. And relationships constantly change and evolve. And that's the one thing that I really wanted to show with these films is when we start with these characters, where they end up is something very, very different. In the film Break Free, for those that haven't watched this, the Constar Chronicles.
Yeah, be careful with spoilers, because I'm not sure if anybody's going to be watching all 15 hours before listening to this interview.
I won't spoil it too bad then. But we rescue one character, and that character helps us during a few key films. But then by the time we get to the end of the films, he's in a very different spot, and you don't necessarily understand why or how we got there, and it's not super important how we got here, but you do see that character evolve through just the circumstances of his environment. And then other characters, we also change, some for the good, some for the bad. And you do see those characters evolve through, I know technically we're not supposed to have a series, but you do see, if we do call this a series, you do see those characters evolve. And I really wanted that to happen, because that's what, it makes it fun for the actors to come, and it makes it fun to tell these type of stories and to see these characters change. I'm a very big fan of DS9, and I would say that this would probably be the closest equivalent to that, because we don't stay stuck in a single, frame of mind of, the first officer will always be the first officer and the captain will always be the captain. And, the one thing I loved about the original series movies was Chekhov wasn't always at the helm. He went to be the first officer on the Reliant, and Sulu went to be the captain of the Excelsior. And, people moved and they changed and they evolved. It's like Geordi, he changed and, from the helm of the Enterprise to engineering. Like, these people change and they evolve. And that's the one thing about the Constar Chronicles is if you took a snapshot of all these people at the beginning of this, and you took a snapshot at the end, they're in completely different spots. And to me, that was very important, both from a storytelling point of view and just from actors' points of view. And I think all of the actors, all of my friends, I think they're very satisfied with all of the decisions that were made. I think they were very happy with that.
So let me ask you a question. Obviously, you're known for being the character of Eric Menard, as well as his Mirror Universe counterpart, Eric Minard. And you already produced about 30 Menard fan films before this. What is the difference between those fan films, those Menard fan films that you did, and the Constar Chronicles. And I should also point out the fact that Constar Chronicles, nothing is actually called Constar Chronicles. I mean, the series is called Constar Chronicles, but you don't actually see that in, like, the opening credits or anything. Everyone has its own unique title. You're technically not a fan series. You're releasing 40 differently titled fan films, very much like Potemkin Pictures does. But altogether, they're, going to be considered the Constar Chronicles. And, Menard was also, different titles, and they were all sort of what I called the Menard saga. But what would you consider to be the difference between the two?
Well, with the Menard saga, those were very much chronicling, like you said, a tapestry of Menard's life. And with the Constar Chronicles, there was a gap. Some people would say not enough of a gap, but there was a gap where I, kind of stepped away from fan films, and I was kind of voted into coming back to, fan films. And on some point, I was kind of hesitant to do it because I felt that I had kind of told all the stories that I wanted to tell, and I didn't want to make this about me. But considering I had the know-how of telling the stories that I knew how to tell, and I'm very much about, I am not the be-all, end-all of fan films. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just a guy with a cell phone who has a couple of friends who know, I've got a friend who knows CGI, and I know a friend who knows how to edit, and, I'm a guy with a cell phone. That's what I know how to do, and I know how to tell a couple of stories. I know how to write, not very well, but I can write some dialogue. So if I came back, what would I do? Because I don't want to do the same thing over and over and over. That gets very boring. So what would I do? So as I sat here and I thought, well, I don't want to make this about me, but what if I used Menard and told a story of Menard and all of these other characters and just use Menard as kind of the extension of all these other people and just told this, instead of using like Star Trek as the sandbox, what if I used Menard as kind of like this sandbox and just had all these characters of, just had this universe of characters and had them, kind of inspire them to go tell their stories and use this as a way to show them and show as many people as I could. It's not that hard to do what I do if you wanted to, because it's really not. Everything I do kind of stems back to when I first started fan films. To this guy, when I was on the bridge of the old Starbase Studios, I had asked him, hey, can I shoot this thing, that I want to do with, my cell phone, real quick, it'll take 2 minutes. And he was like, well, you can't do that. And I was like, well, why not? And he was like, well, because nobody does it that way. Look at my camera. And he showed me like this $1,000 camera, this fancy schmancy thing. And, I listened to him kind of talk about his camera. And, when he walked off the bridge, after kind of, put me under his thumb, I was like, the heck with that. And I shot what I shot anyway, and that ended up making pen pals. But I never listened to him, because I thought, well, why would you put someone down? So I really wanted this to be the extension of that, and to encourage as many people as I could. So I thought if I create as many characters that are interesting and try to encourage as many people as I could, that would be worth coming back for fan films. And again, I know I have, quite a few people that are like, oh, he's just being selfish and creating drama by coming back and he was just faking it. But, that really was my motivation for coming back, was to inspire as many people as I could to do what I do. And it's actually worked in a couple of ways. So, that's kind of the difference between the Constar films and the Menard films, is you have so many more characters that are rich characters than we did in the Menard films, which was more focused on Menard.
Well, it's interesting that you say that part of this is to try to show other people that it can be done. That's one of the reasons why I call you the heart of Star Trek fan films, because that's the whole thing about Star Trek fan films. They don't all have to be a Star Trek Continues or a Prelude to Axanar. And it's great if you can do that. It's great if you have the ability to film something of that quality. I certainly appreciate the amount of work that people like, Joshua Irwin and Victoria Fox put into their Avalon Universe fan films and into interlude, which I'm doing, and obviously Axanar is its own animal. But for the vast majority of fan filmmakers, they're closer to you than they are to Vic Mignogna or Alec Peters. And because of that, they might hesitate to say, all I got is a cell phone, and, I'm a little overweight, and I don't have the really amazing sets, and, I don't know how to act. And there's a million reasons not to make a Star Trek fan film. And you put yourself out there. Certainly there's people out there who will criticize nearly everything you do. Jarvis Davison. Hi, Jarvis.
Oh, my goodness.
But, and there's other folks that, are just looking to, criticize because, criticizing is easier than actually doing something.
I tell you, one of the things, and this has been one of the blessings of fan films, and this is the way it should be. When I first got into fan films, it was very much, are you part of this group or are you part of that group? And I really hated that. And I've tried my best to steer clear of that group, and I know that, it hasn't always been that way because of certain circumstances and whatnot, and there's always going to be, do you like this fan film or do you like this fan film? And then there's always going to be those type of drama people, and that's just, it's always going to be the nature of the beast. But I'll tell you what, two of the best people that I just have the hugest respect for is Josh Irwin and Victoria Fox. And I'll tell you, they're two of the most professional people. And for all rights, they should never even give me the time of day. For anyone that's seen their films, they are so high above me in terms of what they bring for what they give. They're as close to what we have for a Star Trek Continues or Star Trek Phase 2 or whatnot. However, Josh is the type of guy, and Victoria, I talk to both of them on a regular basis. And every time I'm like, hey, you want to come on set? They're like, heck yeah. Every time I'm like, hey, I need this for my film. Can you shoot this real quick? They're like, heck yeah. Or I'm like, hey, I need this voiceover. Can you do this? They're like, heck yeah. Or I'm like, hey, I want to run this past you. What do you think of this story? They're like, oh, man, I like that. I dig that. They spent all day with me when I shot Break Free, because we went to Warp 66 studio, which I tell you what, Wolf and Dan Reynolds, they got the best studio, absolute best. I haven't been to Aries Studio, so I can't say anything about Alex's set, but, this summer I will be, so I can't speak to that point yet. So, Alec, I'm getting to you, man. I'll be there.
It's that's pretty amazing as well, but yeah, when I've heard about what Glenn's done with Warp 66 and Dan, it's just, it's definitely something to be proud of.
Yeah, it is. That place is the most welcoming, and Victoria and Josh were there. And for all intents and purposes, they didn't have to be. They could have been like, dude, you shoot on a cell phone? My camera costs more than your entire, all of your budgets for all of your films. but those two, they've never been like that. And that's the way fan films should be. People like Nick Cook, Robin Hurt, I think his last name is.
He's from Star Trek Dark Armada in the Netherlands, so he's got a bit of a Dutch accent.
George Kayan, I think his last name. Kayan, yeah.
George Kayan, yes, of Star Trek Antilles.
Yeah. Those guys, whenever I ask, I'm like, hey, I kind of need this for a cameo. Luke Sutton, every time I ask, hey, can you help me out? They do. That is the type of camaraderie that should be in fan films.
Yeah, by the way, you forgot one.
Who's that?
Yeah, you're talking to him.
Oh, I was about to say, don't say Johnny Lane. Oh, my goodness.
Precious himself, yep.
My goodness.
I got the call from Vance. Now, I'd already done a cameo in one of your Bernard films, but you gave me a call on a Sunday night, and you were just desperate. One of the people who was supposed to be giving you a scene had backed out, apparently, at the last minute, and you were in a rush to get this thing finished. You needed, this, I guess, maybe 7 lines of dialogue recorded. I think you gave me 48 hours. And you called me up because you needed somebody with a DS9 tunic that could replace the little gray dicky with with like a black
one, yeah,
high collar
black
one.
Yeah.
Which ironically, I ended up using a uniform that I'd had from, the Picard jacket uniform from season 5 and beyond, had that kind of gray shirt with the black high turtleneck top. I used that, but I had to turn it around because the captain's rank was actually like sequined on to it, so I couldn't pull them off. So the shirt I'm wearing underneath that was actually the Picard gray and black tunic, but backwards, and my DS9 uniform over it, because I had to be a mirror universe 24th century Starfleet officer, or Terran officer, or whatever the heck it is. And anyway, so you needed me to record this. And it was not that difficult to do, but you also mentioned just sort of in passing that the camera needed to shake, because I'm in the middle of this, star system is ripping apart, universe is about to be destroyed kind of thing. And I said, wait a second, you need the camera to shake. I film my stuff with the camera on a tripod, right? In order to shake it, I need to have somebody else holding the camera. And he said, well, that's okay. I can try to shake it myself later on. So, you can never do a shake the same way that, somebody shaking the camera can do it. And then I thought to myself, I didn't have access to Wendy that night. She was out. But my son, Jaden, 9-year-old Jaden, well, he's old enough to hold the camera, although my camera's, big and heavy now. I got this new Lumix 2500 camera. But anyway, I said, Jaden, you want to film me? And he was up for it. I also offered him a point on his quest to get 50 points, and he gets Minecraft on his PS4, so he was up to 47 points. He took the point offer. And, I got into the uniform, and I put the lamp on the floor to sort of underlight me to make it look interesting. And, you don't care about backgrounds and crap, so I'm basically sitting in front of the bathroom door. It was just, that's the great thing about appearing in a VANCE major fan film is that you can basically just sit in your living room or your, dining room or your bedroom or, in front of your bathroom and film a scene. You don't care about sound quality. You don't care about, hair or makeup or any of that crap. So anyway, Jaden is going to be filming me, and I had to sort of teach him how to shake the camera, because if you shake it like a Polaroid picture or an Etch-a-Sketch, it looks like literally, the world is coming apart, and it doesn't look like a ship is getting hit. It, basically looks like somebody shaking an Etch-a-Sketch. So we actually went over, in a whole bunch of different takes, how to shake the camera just a little tiny, teeny bit. And every time it's like, no, less than that, Jaden. And we kept looking and analyzing. And so it took about 10 minutes or so to get it to the point where he could do it right. And then, of course, he has to film me take after take after take as I'm trying to remember all the dialogue. And I've memorized it, but I'm not delivering it properly. And I keep saying spatial as opposed to temporal. And I'm flubbing this line and flubbing that line. Meanwhile, my poor son, his arms are cramping up, and he has to kind of keep putting the camera down and shaking them so that he can go back to holding the camera again. And I'm so desperate to, get the lines out properly because I don't want to torture my poor son. He was a real trooper. He wanted that point towards this Minecraft for PS4. And, after, I guess, about 25 minutes or so, we got your footage later on that night. I cleaned it all up for you, and I got the best takes, and, I cropped it appropriately so you couldn't see that much of the bathroom door. And that is at the end of your episode, The Phantom, by the way. Anybody wants to zoom forward to the episode called The Phantom, you will see me in the post-credits scene, and you will see my son Jaden as a cameraman. I think the youngest credited cameraman in Star Trek fan film history. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, first off, it's at least the youngest cameraman I've got, so for me, but given the fact that last minute I was pulling out what little hair I had left trying to get somebody to do this, it's hard enough to find people to do it, anyway, let alone last minute, because it's like that, the film Phantom was one that I had written probably about maybe a month and a half, before, deadline, or maybe 2 months before deadline. Like, it was one of those films where it's like I came up with it last minute. I really shouldn't have even put it out, but I was like, with the reception I got from Ring of Fire, which is at the very end of that, not to spoil it for anyone, but it has a little cliffhanger that it's like, I would be dumb not to revisit this real quick. I've got to write something up, and then I need to really hit the mirror universe with this. I've got to set this up. So I wrote something real quick, and I was like, okay, I've got to get this out. So this last-minute revision, I really needed to get this out. So the fact that I kept having to wait on this part that eventually would go to Jonathan, like, I don't stress out often, but, like, I needed to hit this deadline to get all the films out for the 8th, because the reason why the 8th is very important is because it's 6 years to the day that I visited Starbase Studios in Oklahoma for the first time. So I really wanted to.
I was wondering about that.
And I really wanted to get all of the films out. And the fact that, you know, I could live with not getting one or two, you know, because it's like, to me, it doesn't really bother. But to get all of these films out, like, everything really is wrapped up by the time you get to the final one. So, you know, Jonathan really did help me out of a crunch out of that one. And you know, the fact that Jaden filmed it, you know, kudos to you, man. You know, even though in the credits, I think I did, you pointed out that I didn't misspell cameraman. I think it's camerama. I think it's what you
Camerama. Yeah, there's
there you go.
No N at the end of cameraman. And
yeah.
You know, now you're stuck with it. But Jaden's okay. I showed him the credits, and he just saw his name and everything. Thought it was the coolest thing. You know,
there you go.
But that, once again, it's the heart of fan films, that you're not requiring people to shoot at a certain level. You know, and a lot of times they're just giving you footage where they're looking straight in the camera. They're not necessarily even playing to somebody else talking, because a lot of your scenes, as people will know, is people communicating over subspace, so that
right.
You don't have to have two people in the scene at the same time, and somebody can do it from their house, which is fine. But you know, it's one of those things where you basically say, hey, anybody can play in my sandbox, my little corner of the Star Trek sandbox, you know, grab a shovel. You know, and as I was saying before, earlier on, there are so many people who are so quick to criticize. And because of that, there are potential fan filmmakers who may be reluctant to put themselves out there. And what you're saying to them is, hey, look, your stuff can't be cheesier or cheaper looking than what I'm doing. You're producing your stuff with the money you find in your couch. I basically, you know, that's my joke about you. You know,
yeah.
you crowdfunded like $500 to buy a bunch of tunics. You know, that was about it. That was like the most you'd ever gotten for anything. You know, I suggested, you know, you try to crowdfund a few $1,000s. You don't want to do that. You know, you're fine with the cheap, and that's fine. But what you're basically saying to people is, you know, look, my actors, you know, some of them can act, most of them can't. You know. But they go in front of it anyway. You're the High School Musical, you know, or even the kindergarten, you know, broccoli and carrot, you know, and you know, fruit pageant, you know, that you go to, you know, and you watch your kid at the school, and then, you know, the kids can't remember their lines and they're off key or whatever, and you're still applauding because you know how hard they've worked, and you want to encourage them.
Well, the thing, like, two things. Greg Teft. When we went to Wolf's to shoot, we shot Break Free, we shot The 11th Hour, and then we shot a couple pickup shots that went into a few other films. But then he had asked before we went there, I think it was like maybe 2 or 3 months before that we knew we were going to shoot, he said, hey, would you mind if I wrote, directed, and just basically did a Constar film? And I said, well, sure. I absolutely, I don't mind. You know, I'll reserve some time out of my schedule, and, you know, if I got to push back a film, we'll push back a film. And I think originally we were going to also film The Gauntlet there, which eventually got turned into a green screen film because we just didn't have time. So I was like, screw The Gauntlet. We'll go ahead and do your film, and I don't, you know, I'll figure out something else for The Gauntlet. So eventually I turned that into a green screen. So we went ahead and made his film too, along with Break Free and 11th Hour. And he was actually doing rewrites on the set because of the limitations that his script had. And I intentionally stayed away from his film because this was one of the first times where I could watch my characters as a fan.
You basically just let him write a Constar Chronicles film,
yeah,
you know, using your characters, and you were like, okay.
Yeah, I filmed my stuff, which I wasn't in much of it. I'm in maybe a third of it, and I was like, I don't want to watch the rest. I don't want to be in it. I don't want to know. I don't want to know anything, because when you get it done, I want to watch it as a fan. And to me, that was a rare gift, and I loved that.
Now, what episode was that he did? Just so people can look for it.
That one is Shakedown.
Shakedown. Okay, cool.
He did the directing. He did the writing. He did the, telling all the actors, the cinematography on it, telling all the actors, go stand here, do this, do this, do this. He did the editing. He did the special effects. Now, he asked me, hey, can I get this CGI shot? I got, he used some of my stock footage of CGI. I got him a specific CGI shot he needed that I didn't have before. But again, he was on set rewriting scenes. He was recasting, with what we had available. He had to, give different people different lines for who we had there, because we didn't have some people that didn't show up. Usually he sees those things as an actor, but this was the first time as a producer that he was seeing this. So, he went through the whole kit and caboodle. And that's one of the things that I wanted to do when I came back to fan films and started doing the Constar Chronicles. And that is, again, a rare gift. To see people do this firsthand, it's just like, dang, that's great. Because it's just like, to see that completed and to be like, these are characters, and the story plays in well with the other things I had. In fact, after I had seen it, I wrote another film that really tied into what he was doing. It was just good stuff, So, yeah, he did a really, really good job. I was very, very proud of him, because I've known him ever since Ray Tessie was doing Starship Republic at the old Starbase. Greg Teft was working on that one there. So I've known him because I was on that Republic shoot there, and that's where I first met Greg the first time. So I've known him for, I think, 3 years now, maybe 4. So it's been years. But this is the first time that, he's actually produced the whole thing from start to finish. So it's just been an amazing process to see someone do that, kind of help nudge them on. He says that he took too long. I say, dude, the fact that you got it accomplished to begin with is an amazing feat.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something. The simple fact that somebody's finished a fan film, it's one of the reasons why my prime directive on Fan Film Factor is rule number 1, there's no such thing as a bad Star Trek fan film, and rule number 2, if you see a bad Star Trek fan film, refer back to rule number 1. Because just getting a fan film finished, no matter how good or bad it is an accomplishment, and it's an achievement that most people who don't make fan films don't understand how much goes into even the worst fan film.
That's exactly it. One of the things I do on my films, and I know this is kind of a cheat, but it makes my actors so much more comfortable. And I hate using the term actors because, quite frankly, none of us on my films are actors. I don't consider us that. I just consider us friends. Josh and Victoria can account to this. When you come on a VANCE film, like, there's swearing, there's laughing, there's joking. It's all of us just hanging out, having fun. So that's why when people come up and say, oh, the Starfleet needs to go on a diet regimen, shut up.
Yes, it does.
None of us are actors. Yeah. And let's be realistic. None of us are in Starfleet. We're just having fun. And when you come on a VANCE set, you don't have to read a script. You can come up there, and it's me holding my cell phone. I'm holding the script in my other hand, or whoever's, if I'm lucky enough to have a scriptie, they're going to read you your lines. And I'll tell you, emulate it this way, read it this way, say it this way, say it this way. I'll give you the performance I want, and then you just emulate me. And that's all you have to do. You don't have to memorize anything. And I'll tell you, it makes it so much better than you have to come on, and memorize, 20 pages of dialogue, on top of a full-time job and on top of having a family and on top of real-world problems. Nah, just let me worry about the heavy stuff. I'll write the script. I'll do all the stuff. Just come. If you have a good idea of what my script is about, awesome. Then you're ahead of the curve. but just come. I'll read you your stuff. I'll let you know what you have to do, emulate it because I know it's in my head, and I'll help you give me a good performance. How easy is that? Just come have fun. We're the ones that are on the bridge. We're the ones sitting in those seats. We're the ones in the uniforms. So we're the ones living the dream. Those ones that criticize, and there's a film, The 11th Hour, where in the beginning I give kind of a speech. Menard gives a speech, and it's kind of talking about the Dominion War and the Dominion and everything. But if you listen to it, there's kind of some double talk, and he's kind of like, when we're in these seats and we're in these uniforms, this is our moment. And it's not Menard talking about the Dominion War. It's really me talking about fan films. And at the end of that, I'm like, let's go prove our haters wrong. And it's really me talking about fan films. And it's kind of me kind of saying, let's rise up and do this stuff. And I do that a lot in my films, do that double talk. But that's kind of the thing about these fan films.
I think you want the term double entendre.
No, I'm not even that smart to use those terms. But
just call me Captain Pedantic.
There you go.
You need to get
Hold on just a second. There's a call coming through. Hold it just a second. Okay, they're done. Go ahead, Jonathan.
So, folks, interestingly enough, that phone call that just came in, Vance and I are having this conversation. You don't know this, but we are having it at what is about 12:30. It's now about 1:30 in the morning in Kansas, where he is. And Vance is at work. Vance has the night shift. You're like a meat plant, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so when we were trying to figure out a time to do this interview, the problem is, obviously, Vance, like a good vampire, sleeps during the day. But he also has a very, very cute, almost 3-year-old, Royce. And he is a good dad to Royce, and he'll take Royce to the playground, and he'll take care of Royce during the daytime when his wife Mona's at work. And Royce is a very talkative little boy, and he's wonderful, and I've heard him. But you really can't have a decent Fan Film Factor interview while Vance is babysitting Royce. So you sort of have to wait until the night shift, but not just any part of the night shift, because you go in at like 6 p.m., right?
Yeah, I go 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Yeah.
So it's really not until Vance kind of crosses midnight that it becomes really quiet enough there to do a decent interview like we're doing right now. So, it's one of those things where when you're doing a blog like I am, you have to be a little bit flexible with your hours. And in Vance's case, it's really taken to the extreme. Now, granted, I'm in California, so we were able to start this interview at 10:30 my time.
Yeah, that's why, sometimes people want to do interviews. And, like, I used to be able to try to squeeze them in on breaks and get them in early or do. I just can't do that anymore. Like, I can work through while I'm doing my paperwork and talk and do, that's kind of just what I do now these days. And I got to work around what I work around, and that's one of the reasons why I can do this one. Like, I don't even do interviews anymore. It's just not appealing because it's like, no, so.
Yeah, I actually got to push Vance into this interview, folks, because, in addition to being this heart of Star Trek fan films, and I say that with, total honesty and total love, for this man and what he does. But Vance is very humble. He really felt like I should be interviewing the other folks who were involved with Constar. And at some point I will. And Greg Teft obviously would be an interesting fellow to talk to. And, there's a lot of people that were involved doing things. But for me, I really wanted Vance to have this moment. And for a number of different reasons, but most of all because you did leave Star Trek fan films, a couple of years ago. You got very frustrated with all the negativity and the hate and all the drama. And you had tried earnestly to do the best job that you could to produce your films. Along with me, you tried to save Starbase Studios from itself and keep it from, collapsing under its own weight. Unfortunately, we failed on that. And, you had this moment of walking away. And, I didn't try to stop you, but to be very honest, I knew you'd be back. And it didn't take very long. I think it took like less than a month and a half. And, you've had those moments where, you lost your magnetic north, and you always found it again. And what has happened since is you've come to not only represent the heart of fan films, but in some ways you're kind of the nexus, string floating through space, but you're the nexus of Star Trek fan films in that you're a place for other fan filmmakers to kind of have cameos in the same series or the same fan film. You already talked about, George Cayenne from Starship Antilles, and you talked about, having Josh and Victoria from the Avalon universe. You've obviously had Michael L. King from Valiant, and, you had Greg Teff from Starship Republic. You've had me. You've had Alec Peters. In fact, what was it? Was it 11th Hour or Phantom where Alec and Josh make a cameo appearance?
It was Phantom.
That was Phantom. Yeah, so, look for Alec Peters in one of Vance's fan films. Now, Alec is Garth, He's in Prelude to Axanar. He's going to be in the Axanar sequels. That's what he does, right? But you know what? He was fine saying to Vance, sure, I'll shoot a scene. And a scene on the USS Ares bridge, which is interesting because your fan film, Phantom, is now the first pure Star Trek universe fan film to feature the Ares Bridge. There's been student films, and I suppose Nexus Monday is close to a Star Trek fan film, but even so, the actors on it are kids, whereas you're pretty much doing pure Star Trek universe fan film, and Axanar's not out yet, and Interlude's not out yet. So guess what? You are the first person to feature the Ares Bridge in a pure Star Trek fan film.
Well, the thing is, and this is what I find, again, most humbling. I asked Alec if he would mind having a cameo, and his first response was, that'd be awesome. Shoot me a script and let me see what you got. And it was so, it was basically like the equivalent of like Mikasa Sukasa. Let me know what you want. And, if I got the uniform, I'll, do you need specific uniforms? Do you need specific lines? Like, what do you need? And if I got it, we can use it. We can do it. And so I told him, I said, well, this is what I need from Josh. So he said, sure, we can shoot that real quick, when we got time between, this and this. And it'd be great. We can do that. And then I thought, well, since you're there, what if we have, you there too, right at the end? And, it wouldn't be nothing too complicated, because again, I didn't want to walk in on your shoot because I never want to, one, waste time, because that's one thing you can't get back, especially on a shoot. But two, I don't want to step on anyone else's toes. But the one thing I do on my shoots is if I go somewhere to shoot, I'm only shooting like 4, 5, 6 different things at one time. So I just got to keep a lot of things in my head. So to me, it's not outside the realm of possibility to be like, hey, while you're there, could you shoot this thing real quick? And it would take maybe 2 minutes tops. So I didn't think that was a difficult thing to ask. But again, it's not my shoot. I didn't want to overreach. So I thought, well, hey, if Josh is going to record this, would you mind doing this real quick? And he was like, yeah, I'd love to do that. And I was like, oh, yay. So I was like a kid in a candy store. So when I finally got the footage back, I loved seeing Alex's uniforms. I said, would you mind wearing your uniform? Because I'm a stickler for those. As many different uniforms as I can get in my films. It's like a bucket list. I'm like, yes, I got this uniform.
You have a Discovery uniform in one of your films.
I do. Yes, I do.
And at first I was thinking, come on, that uniform is like 150 years old at this point. And then you actually have a line where, the character says, that uniform is 150 years old, and apparently it was just like a dress-up day on the Starbase, and it's like, okay, maybe that would happen, dress like a pirate day or whatever. Who says that, some, research station out in the middle of nowhere doesn't, have some fun.
The fact that
kudos for doing that, too.
Well, and it's all because, like, I was so miffed because there was a fan film I did called Discover. And it was out of the first batch of Menard films. And the woman I worked with, her name's Sierra Taylor. Wonderful person. I've known her for years. But she didn't have a Discovery uniform. So I was like, well, that's fine. And this was back before Discovery first came out. But I really wanted to tell Discovery, a film about Discovery. And it was basically, that film was basically about stop nitpicking Discovery, just give it a chance, just knock it off. And so if you watch that film with that in mind, you understand that's the story I'm kind of telling, is give Discovery a chance. Don't nitpick stuff so much. But I never was able to get that uniform in there because she didn't have it. And so some people, I won't name who, but some people missed the fact that that was a Discovery era film because I'm in my Cage uniform. She's not in a Discovery uniform. So they missed that. So this was a way to get that uniform and, you know, that kind of bucket list item down, you know. So that's why I called reference to that by going, don't worry about it. That's not what you called, you know. So I really had a lot of fun with that line because I was so miffed that that one person didn't get that reference to it being from the Discovery era, you know. So, anywho.
Yeah, you take things a little bit too personally when people complain about your stuff, don't you?
I do. Like, some things I don't care about. Other things I'm like, no, don't you get it? I'm such a nerd.
Yeah, it's true. On the one hand, you don't care about the cord in the doorway, and, you know, on the other hand, you know, you'll be like a single well-phrased piece of criticism can just sort of ruin your entire week.
Right? Like, that whole,
crazy.
Don't you know that T-shirt represents a Discovery uniform? Don't you get that? Yeah. When I first started these Constar films, I was only going to do like maybe 10 of them. And then more people just wanted to be part of it. They're like, hey, can I be in this? And like you said, it's one of the good things about these films is, you know, oh yeah, I'll put you on screen, we'll tell a story. And so they, you know, just put yourself against a blank wall and we'll, you know, easy to do that. That's what they did in TOS, you know, just sit against a blank wall and film yourself. So that's basically the same thing I do. You know, whatever's easiest for you that you have at your own convenience, you know, or, you know, put yourself in a nice background, you know, whatever's convenient. You know, because my mentality is like, you don't know what the other character's going through at the moment, so it doesn't really matter to me. It doesn't matter. It doesn't impact my story. What matters to me is what are we talking about in this moment. So their background doesn't matter to me. So I don't really go into those details. But, like, the more people want to get in on the different stories, the more I write. So it just continued to build stories and then build stories and then build stories. So I was like, well, if I'm going to do this, I want to spend more time with my son, so I'm just going to include my son in some of these stories. So it was a way for him and me to do stuff. And then I got some cosplayers involved, like Mike Schmidt. Like, he does some wonderful makeup, and he does it all on his own. And he's in several of these films as a Cardassian, and he got his daughter involved. So she does a wonderful job as an Andorian. It looks pretty authentic. And it was funny because my son Royce, who played in the final film of the Menard saga, I created a character called Eobard, which is a reference to the Reverse Flash from the TV show. And I even dress him up in red and yellow as a nod to the Reverse Flash. But I brought that character back in the Constar films. But it was funny because Mike Schmidt, he said, hey, I'm going to have my daughter, you know, do some of the makeup stuff with me, and so it's something we can do together. And then afterwards, we'll go to Starbucks. I think it'll be kind of funny that her and I will be in Starbucks together in makeup. I was like, oh, it's funny. So me and Royce were sitting on our kitchen floor watching this father and daughter do the makeup together. And, you know, he was sending me his lines. And the week before that, I had recorded a scene with Royce. And I said, okay, Royce, look like you're scared. And he said, okay, Dada. And I said, I said the line, and I said his name, Eobard. And the whole day, he was going around the house going, Edar, pointing to himself going, Edar. And then the next week when we're getting in the footage from this Cardassian, which Royce loves watching the footage come in from the different edits and whatnot, but he sees the Cardassian, and he says the name Eobard. And Royce's eyes get really big, and he points to himself, and he goes, Edar? And so it was really funny and I felt it was really ironic that here's this father and daughter that are doing the filming together, and then as me and my son are watching the footage of this, father and daughter filming, so, and that's one of the nice things about these fan films is, even though the critics, the internet critics will, torpedo these things, to me, I can't take those memories, of me spending time with my son, on the kitchen floor watching, or this father and daughter who went to Starbucks in makeup. To me, those are the fun times, or the talented friendships, the fun times that I've had with these people on set, the friendships that I've met with these people. That's what these things are all about, man, because it makes everybody's day when we get to hang out on set. That's what these things are all about,
Well, so, the best part is, in addition to all the friendships forever, at the end of it, you actually have a Star Trek fan film.
Yeah, 40 brand new ones,
40, 10 hours, 15 hours of Star Trek fan film. But yeah, and by the way, I didn't want to miss a tangent, but did you want to say anything more about, the Alec uniform, that we were in the middle of that story?
No, like I said, I really, I was just excited to have that, as you walked in there, like I kind of get goosebumps when I see that, because I'm really a big fan of those type of, that uniform. I think it's kind of wonderfully designed. To me, I kind of put them on.
Are you talking about the Pike era uniform, or are you talking about the earlier one, the 4 Years War uniform, or both?
But not the Pike one. Like, I like my red Pike era uniform. I think that looks nice just because it's not something you see every day. The Pike era uniform I think is nice. I like that better than the TOS one. But I do like the 4 Years War one. That's the newest one that they have out, right?
Yeah, newest and also oldest, since that one actually predates the Pike era.
Does it predate?
10 years. Oh. Yeah, because the 4 Years War took place 10 years before Prelude. Prelude to Axanar is all basically 10 years after the 4 Years War. They're all talking about it.
Okay.
So they're wearing the Pike era uniforms because that's still 10 years before Kirk. So in Prelude, everybody except for that one shot of Sonya that's a flashback is wearing, the turtleneck collar Pike era uniforms. And then, right now in the Axanar sequels and an interlude, you're going 10 years before that. The 4 Years War is 20 years before Kirk. And, that's where you have those, more tight-fitting black collared. Actually, you're wearing sort of a black mock turtleneck underneath because you're kind of wearing a second layer above it. But those uniforms look really, really nice. I know some of the folks who like to criticize everything are like, oh, they look like a mesh between Next Generation and the original series. Like, oh, okay, what's wrong with that? I mean, they're both Starfleet uniforms, and why not go to the same kind of designer, more than once?
That's one of those things where it's like when Jeremy and I first went to do Melbourne, we kind of redesigned the TOS uniforms. Then we decided, no, let's just stick with TOS. But it's one of those things where it's like when you make a film, there's a lot of things you have to look at. And at the end of the day, you have to just decide, like, what looks best for what you want to do. And I think those uniforms look great, at least for me. Now, again, it has to deal with, it's a flavor issue. It's a taste issue. Personally, I think they look fine. I like them enough to where I asked Alec, hey, where do I get one? Because I enjoy having a nice uniform collection for myself. Because if my mentality is if I get a different uniform, I will write a film around it. Personally, for Christmas, I am going to, fingers crossed, get a red Discovery uniform, the one that Pike wore, or at least his crew would have wore. And if I do, I will be writing a film with that in mind for next year. And that's, I love that.
You're an opportunist.
I certainly am. Well, I mean, if you have it, why not write one around it instead of just saying, look what I have, take one picture and be like, oh, there we go. Why not write one? But, I mean, that uniform, I do like it. I like it a lot. But another thing that Alec did for me, and not to suck up to him, or turn this into, the Alec Peters hour, but since we're on that topic, several people actually put this in motion, and I'm not sure who all to thank, so I am going to forget some people, so forgive me ahead of time, everyone. They put me on the plaque. I think I'm on 2.
Yeah, you are.
But
You're on my. I was the first person to put you on a plaque. Alec followed my lead.
Well, there you go.
And here's the thing. What we're talking about is the ship dedication plaque, which, and in the case of the USS Ares, there was one plaque, but I wanted another plaque for the USS Artemis. So I had to figure out what names to put on mine. And there were certain ones that we obviously put on both. Obviously Gene Roddenberry and Steve Einat went on both. And, Alec got his name on it. And, I got my name on it. My bigger donors got their names on it as well. Obviously my wife, Wendy. Thank you, Wendy, for letting me make my fan film. And, Alec had his names and I had my names. Well, eventually you're like, okay, I've got like 35 names, but you start running out of names to put on there. And, there were certain, like, people in the fan film community they wanted to include, like the folks who are my fellow admins on Fan Film Forum, Dave Hegney and Colin Krapp and Justin Beauvais. And I wanted Vance to be on there, but at the same point in time, I just thought to myself, here's the thing about Vance. Vance is Menard. For all intents and purposes, I know you as Vance Major, but I also you're just totally Menard, and you've been in like all these different fan films because you've been in Valiant and you've been in Dominion, and you just keep making appearances in various places. I thought, wouldn't it be cool if Menard was in Interlude? But obviously we can't show you an Interlude. We didn't have a spot for you. But what if you were part of the design team on the Ares class? And I wanted to make sure that this worked in timing. You may remember I shot you that message asking about when did Menard enter Starfleet, because you were, during the Pike era already, you said a lieutenant commander, or even a full commander, I'm not sure, but you were one of the others. So by the time that the Ares had been sort of already around for 10 years, you were, an engineer.
Yeah.
Lieutenant commander or commander level. So I thought, well, what if you were a lieutenant 10 years before that, working in the engineering department, putting together the propulsion systems of the Ares class? And I thought that would be really, really cool. So, I gave you that little surprise of adding Eric Menard, not Vance Major, to the very last spot on the USS Artemis plaque. And then Alec liked that idea so much that he put you onto the USS Ares plaque as well. So Menard is there. Menard makes a cameo appearance in both Axanar as well as in Interlude.
And that's the thing, like if for me, like it wouldn't have interested me to be on the plaque, as Vance Major, because again, it like nothing I've done is supposed to be about me. Like, have it be about Menard, because when you go and see on the plaque, like, who's Vance Major? To me, it's like, yeah, have it be Menard, because we can tell that in a story, and we did. Like, I put that in. I think it's which ship is it Ares? Or is it which hat is it? I forget which one it is. Forgive me, I forget which ship it was on that I put in the film. But I put it in the film. December was gray, but it's the plaque, because Menard in that film, Menard has a form of Alzheimer's, and it's a story basically about Alzheimer's. But he's looking at the plaque on his pad, and he magnifies it, and he sees his name on the plaque, and it's sort of his way of kind of remembering, and then he goes to the next picture, which is of him and his dead wife, Emily. To me, I included that in there because when people start to lose their memory, they start to look at things that meant something to them. So I put that in there because, to me, it was such a touching thing that was done, from the fan film community, a real-life thing that I put in the film, something that meant a great deal to me. But something that Alec did, just because I asked, when I saw that they were filming, I saw that, knowing that I was on, one of the plaques, I asked, I was like, hey, can how much for one of those hats? I'd love to get one. And he was like, shoot, I'll send you one. I think it was like a week later, I had forgotten all about it, because I'm so used to people making empty promises, I forget. the dude sent me a hat. Then he sent me like a bunch of patches. I was like, oh man, again, kid at, Christmas time, I was like, I could so put this on my cage area uniform I could put this patch on this uniform. I could put this patch on this uniform. I could put for a story purpose, for something, or, I could use this for this, or man, this is really cool, So it's just one of those things where it's like that type of camaraderie / hospitality / just being a cool person. That makes me want to go visit the sets even more. Just meet the dude one-on-one and be like, man, let me buy you a burger. let's take a selfie and just let me meet you, man. Cause I remember when I first got into fan films and trying to reach out to, one of the bigger people in fan films, and they kind of blew me off. And now here we are. And, here I am kind of rubbing elbows with people, and someone had called me, a quote unquote legend. And I'm like, dude, I'm not a legend. I'm just like you are, man. Don't ever call me that. Like, I will always talk to someone. I will always be available unless I'm working or, with Royce or whatever. Like that, of course, takes priority. But like, I remember how I was treated when I first came into, fan films. And I don't ever want to be that way toward people. I always want to be very welcoming to people.
Whoever, did that to you at the very beginning, I mean, that's not the, there are so many really wonderful, I mean, I think that the Josh and Victoria description is more of what you see in fan films. I mean, when I asked Josh, would you want to direct my script? He read it, he liked it, and, he was all for it. And, when we asked Victoria if she wanted to come along as well, there were some questions about, whether, going from one director to two was appropriate. But, they talked it over and they decided that they worked, very well collaboratively, and they wanted to tackle it together. And since then they've been, utterly and completely dedicated to my project, which has become our project because, it's just, it's not an Avalon universe, it's Interlude, but, it's just one of those things where as fan filmmakers, they're dedicated to the craft. This is an opportunity to make something really, really great, or to help you make something really, really great. When Josh and Alec did that scene for you, when Jaden and I filmed our scene for you, we just wanted to help, as Kirk says in City on the Edge of Forever, the three most important words in the galaxy are "let me help," and recommends them more even than "I love you." That's what fan films are all about. So the person who's saying, don't do it because you got a cell phone, is like, oh, screw you. Those that are too stuck up to talk to you, they're not worth it.
And that's the thing with, whenever, I reach out to someone, I'm like, hey, I see you have, this type of uniform. Would you be interested in filming with me? Or, those people that reach out to me say, hey, I don't have a uniform, but I really would like to be in it. And I'm like, well, the studio's here. Would you be willing to drive? If you can't, do you still want to be in a film? Because I can work around that, Like, I always try to give options instead of saying no. Or, like those people who are overweight. Dude, I'm overweight, and I'm still in a Star Trek uniform. Like, I don't care about that. Like, let's put you in a film, or, just because you don't meet a certain physical, the aesthetics of what some people would think you should look like. Like, I don't care about that. Like, those pretty, quote unquote, pretty people. Like, man, screw that. Like, let's have fun. I'm appreciative to the people that want to be in my film, because it's like, dude, my films aren't the greatest films, but dang it, if you want to send me something and you're willing to film, great. Here's how you do it. Send it to me, upload it to Google Drive, and I'll use it. And I'm very appreciative because, again, I know when I first came into this, I was always willing to go above and beyond for Michael King, and I still am. Anytime he's like, hey, Vance, I need this, or hey, we're going to shoot on this date, no problem. I will certainly be there. What time? And same thing with Josh. If he says, hey, we're shooting on this day, not a problem. Same thing for George. He's asked me, I've already appeared in one. I've shot for another. When he asks me to come back for anything else, dude, not a problem. I'll be a regular on yours if you want. Like, that's how dedicated I am to the people who are, loyal to me. Like, if you need something, what do you need? And
By the way, you also made a cameo in Demons, the latest Avalon Universe fan film.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I feel like that was the first time I was on green screen the right way. Because if you've seen a VANCE film green screen, it's like, oh wow, it's all that green haze around him. It must be a spatial anomaly.
Did you go to Fayetteville, Arkansas to film that?
No, I came back. It was the same weekend we shot Break Free, 11th Hour, and all those Constar ones. We stopped by Josh and Victoria's studio, which is I think 2 or 3 hours out of the way.
They're in Fayetteville, Arkansas.
Yeah. Okay. Then yeah, we did. I'm terrible with names of towns and people. But yeah, we stopped there. We shot that, and we actually turned my Cage era. I brought my Cage era uniform, my red one. We turned it around, and they gave me one of their comm badges. So it's actually my uniform that we used, but we just used one of their comm badges, which I was like, oh man, that's awesome. They used one of their magnetic comm badges, which I had never seen before. I was like, oh dude, I feel spiffy.
I have one of those actually. It's very cool. The magnet is very, very strong, but it's not super strong. So I actually have it on a jacket that has a little pocket on the chest, a little zippered pocket. So the magnet part is in the pocket, and the pocket is zipped, which means at worst I only lose the comm badge, and I can look down for it. I don't have to worry about losing a little tiny magnet as well, because that thing is it's like a lithium battery. It's like you drop it, you'll never find it. But anyway, so let's start wrapping this up, because I realize that we've been on the phone for probably close to 90 minutes here, and folks want to get on with their lives.
Might be a two-part episode for you, huh?
Yeah, two-part interview, and then they got to binge watch the interview, or binge listen in this case.
Right.
Okay,
right.
So you've just won the Super Bowl. What are you going to do next? You've just released 40 brand new and 29, redone fan films in 3 days. What are you going to do for an encore?
Take a break for one.
Sleep. I want to sleep.
Yeah. I've already written one film that I'm going to do at Alex's studio. I have 3 on the horizon that I'm going to do. 2 are going to be shot at Alex's studio, or at least one full one is going to be shot at Alex's studio, and then 2 scenes are going to be shot at Alex's studio of another film. And then the rest of that one is going to be shot at Warp 66 studio. And then another film is going to be shot at Warp 66 studio. And then bits and pieces of another film is going to be shot at each studio. So I have 3 total films that I'm going to shoot. One has been written completely, and it's kind of my version of Yesterday's Enterprise. It's basically the friendship between Garth and Menard, and it tells that story, because that was a story that Alec had wanted to tell. And quite frankly, I'm getting a little too old to play a younger Menard. There's a little bit too much gray in my beard. So it was, that type of story is a way to get Garth and Menard together in a realistic way. And I didn't want to tell a holodeck adventure, or, it's a way that I'm going to be able to get those 2 together and have them talk. So that's a film that I'm going to be doing. And then the other one I will be doing will be at Alex's studio, will be a mirror universe version of Wolf 359. And that will be kind of what starts all of the Constar mirror universe stuff. And it will be kind of a bridge between my Valiant mirror universe stories and the Constar mirror universe stories. So it'll be kind of a bridging that gap there. And it'll be kind of a twist on the film Resistance that I've done. So it'll be kind of a nice twist on that, something that we've already done, but yet a little bit different. So, and then the other film that we'll be doing at Warp 66 will be kind of our version of The Wrath of Khan, except it will take place after the 11th hour. And I can't get into too many spoilers with that one without delving into what happens in the latter part of the Constar Chronicles. But when you see the latter part of the Constar Chronicles, you know why I can't get into the spoilers. But there's a lot of changes, like I said, from when the Constar Chronicles start versus where they end up and where they end. But let's just say with the changes in the crew, we'll be exploring that and going forward with the crew there. So, but that's basically, we'll be telling less stories, but more focused on characters. And then going forward with any new stories there, it will focus less on Menard and more with the new Constar crew. So I do want to delve less with Menard and more with the new Constar crew. So,
well, let me ask you one last question, because I notice, being able now to compare some of your original Menard films to, your later ones, they're definitely getting better. First of all, you're tackling some episodes that are not your normal fare. You've done some that were, large ensemble cast episodes with multiple actors on screen at the same time, with, action, big pacing. Obviously, the 11th Hours comes to mind. These were big episodes and not just your, typical 3 to 8 minute long, two people talking over subspace. As a filmmaker, and at this point I think you need to call yourself a filmmaker, even if you don't have a Joshua Irwin or Victoria Fox pedigree of acting or cinematography or any of that. As a filmmaker, what do you think you've learned in the years that you've been doing all of this stuff?
I would say, honestly, you just need to jump in and see what works and what doesn't. Because, that's the thing. You still have to go back to, the film Cageless, which fails on so many levels, from sound to the camera work. But the story, I still feel needed to be told with Menard and Pike to what I was trying to accomplish. And I see what didn't work. And I needed to learn that lesson. And, of course, if I could do it over, differently, I would. So to anyone out there, go see what works for you. And again, it boils down to, if I had listened to that guy who told me to, you can't do that, you've got to go get a camera and $1,000 camera and do this and this and this. Dude, there's better camera on my phone than there is on a lot of cameras out there. So go do what works for you. And if it doesn't work, well, then you learn something. So dive right in. And sometimes you sink and sometimes you swim. So that's the thing I think I've learned is I've had a lot more successes than I have failures. And don't be afraid to fail. Because, right now, if you include all of the films, and even though, yes, some of them are special editions, but if you include all of the films, I have more films than there are episodes of the original series. That's an accomplishment.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and that's of course, I do have an ego in the mentality of I know what I have to bring to the table. I know that I can act, but I'm not an actor. I'm not a filmmaker, but I can make a film. I can act if you need me to do something.
Your acting's actually gotten a lot better comparing it to the older stuff. Especially when you do Minard, your intensity playing him. I don't know what you're reaching into in yourself, and if there's actually an evil Vance Major, underneath all that. But
the thing is, I was abused growing up, so I walk a fine line, and I know what I don't want to be, and so I tap into that, and I've seen a lot of things growing up, just like a lot of people have. And that's what I use to guide myself when I'm acting. And a lot of the stories that I write are inspired from what I've seen and are based on stuff that are in my life. And a lot of the stories, they're not necessarily Star Trek stories. They're stuff from my life. And that's why, when you say that I'm Menard, that really hits home a lot more than you think. It is fun to play the bad guy because that's not me, but that's the road that's not taken. I do have that anger inside me, but that's not me. But because of the abuse that I have gone through, that could have very easily been me. And that's the thing, a lot of us have that inside of us, but we choose to not be that, or maybe we do be that. So I mean, that's the thing. I think that's why these stories can be relatable. That's why they can be identified with. I'm not ever going to be Collie. I'm never going to be Vic. I'm never going to be these great Star Trek people, quote unquote. But I do have something else to bring, and that's relatability. They're very human stories. So, I appreciate you saying the acting's gotten better, but I do tap into my own life experiences to tell the stories that I tell.
I will say that it shows that you're pulling a lot from yourself and putting a lot of yourself into all of this, into the stories, into your character. That's always been very obvious in all of this. And it's one of the reasons why that word tapestry, mosaic, whatever you want to call it, came in, because I really do feel like, as much as any fan film out there, and probably a lot more than many of them, this is so focused on character. If you're looking for exciting story, if you're looking for great space battles or whatever, or heavy romance or, amazing pacing or whatever, no, you're not going to find that here. 90% of the stuff you're going to watch is people talking to each other over comm channels. But the personal truths that are shared in all of that are so unique and, are character building in this reality you've created. And so my recommendation to folks, if you're looking for high-quality fan films, no, don't stop here. But if you're willing to take a little bit of extra time and give a little extra patience and allow for the cord in the doorway and the people who don't necessarily look like they're Starfleet officers or don't necessarily act like they've gone to, acting school, if you can put all that aside and allow for Menard and Constar to be what they are, the final experience is very rewarding. And like I said, I've watched through 16 of these 51 so far, so, I guess that's about a third of the way. And I'm going to finish binge watching all of them because I want to finish the blanket.
Well, I'm glad you've enjoyed it, man. And, honestly, it's like you watch them, it's pretty much me. If you get a sense of who Menard is from them, you'll pretty much know who I am. It's all there. Not the quotes, it's like Samuel Clemens said in that Time Tarot episode, read the books, that's who I am. That's pretty much this, I write Menard, the way I would do things,
Yeah, and that takes a lot of courage, for all the VANCE detractors out there, Jarvis. It takes a lot of courage to dig inside of you and, not just to write a little, but to write so much and to produce so much, So I know I've said that numerous times in this conversation, I'm just going to say it again, that Vance is showing you the way. He is showing you it can be done. So if you see it, you now have no excuse not to try to do it yourself. That's all I have to say.
Well, Jonathan, thank you very much for having me on here, man. I really appreciate it. As always, it's a pleasure to talk to you, brother.
Pleasure and an honor as well. And anyway, Vance, congratulations on this amazing feat. After you take your very, very long hibernation and come back to fan films, I can't wait to see what you give us next.
Well, thank you, my friend. See you next time, brother, all right?
All righty.